Earth's eras. Imagine now we're at the end of Precambrian time. Earth's organisms are beginning to change. So along with single-celled organisms, we now have plant-like organisms and some jellyfish-like organisms floating all around in Earth's oceans. But then we move into the Paleozoic era and an explosion of life begins. As mentioned before, the time between Precambrian time and the present is divided into three long units called eras. The Paleozoic era is the oldest era and is divided into 6 periods. The Mesozoic era is the middle era and it's divided into 3 periods, and the Cenozoic is the youngest and is divided into 2 periods. During the Cambrian, life took a big leap forward, and this is referred to as the Cambrian explosion. During the early Cambrian, Earth's oceans were home to many strange organisms, unlike any animals that are alive today. This Cambrian explosion is because so many new life forms appeared within a relatively short time, and for the first time, many organisms had hard parts, including shells and outer skeletons. At this time, all organisms lived in the oceans, and many of those animals were invertebrates, meaning they didn't have backbones. So this is why this time is often referred to as the Age of Invertebrates. Now, during this time, Earth's climate was very warm, and rising seas flooded continents, forming many shallow inland seas. The early Paleozoic ended after the Ordovician period with a mass extinction event. However, many invertebrates survived this. Now, Middle Paleozoic found new life forms of life living in huge coral reefs along edges of continents, and soon animals with backbones evolved. Some of the earliest vertebrates were fish, giving this Paleozoic era the name the Age of Fishes. Now, continents began colliding, creating mountain ranges, and evidence suggests that the Appalachian Mountains began to form. And at the end of the Paleozoic era, the Appalachians were probably as high as the Himalayas are today. Like the early Paleozoic, the Middle Paleozoic also ended with a mass extinction event. In the time of the late Paleozoic, fish-like organisms spent part of their lives on land, and some of the earliest amphibians involved, thereby giving this time the name of the Age of Amphibians. Now, geological evidence indicates that many continental collisions are occurring during this time, forming new mountain ranges, and Earth's continents had formed a supercontinent called Pangaea. The largest mass extinction in Earth's history occurred at the end of the Paleozoic era, wiping out 95% of marine life and 70% of all life on land. There is still debate as to what might cause this, but some scientists claim a large meteorite crashed, causing dramatic climate changes. When people imagine what Earth looked like millions of years ago, they often picture a time with large trees, thick jungles, and dinosaurs. Dinosaurs lived during the Mesozoic era, often called the Age of Reptiles. The Mesozoic is divided into Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. The breakup of Pangaea was also a dominant geological event of the Mesozoic era, and Pangaea began to break apart in the late Triassic. The climate of the Mesozoic was warmer than the climate of the Paleozoic era. It was so warm that for the most of the era there were no ice caps, even at the poles. The species of organisms that survived the mass extinction at the end of the Paleozoic lived in a world with few species. This allowed organisms to inhabit unoccupied space. Thereby, new types of plants began to appear, such as cone-bearing trees, and at the end of the era, the first flowering plants evolved. Dinosaurs dominated the land, but fossils indicate they also swam in the seas and flew in the air. But while they dominated the Mesozoic era, another kind of animal also lived during this time: mammals. Mammals evolved early in the Mesozoic and remained small in size throughout the era. The Mesozoic era ended 65.5 million years ago with another mass extinction event. Scientists propose a large meteorite impact contributed to this extinction, producing dust to block sunlight. This, along with volcanic eruptions occurring at the same time, would not allow plants to photosynthesize, and without plants, animals died, including dinosaur species and other Mesozoic vertebrate species. The Cenozoic era spans the time from the end of the Cretaceous period, which was 65.5 million years ago, to present day. The Cenozoic is divided into two periods, the Tertiary and Quaternary period. During the Cenozoic era, the Atlantic Ocean continued to widen and Earth's continents continued to move apart. And other continents collided, such as India crashing into Asia, which pushed up the Himalayas, which are the highest mountain range on Earth today. Now, after the mass extinction event at the end of the Mesozoic era, there was more space for surviving species, including flowering plants and grasses. These plants provided new food sources, and this enabled an evolution of many types of animal species, including mammals. Mammals were so successful that the Cenozoic era is sometimes referred to as the age of mammals. The Cenozoic era had what are called megamammals, with some of the largest living during the Oligocene and the Miocene periods, which included woolly mammoths and saber-toothed cats. Scientists also believe humans first evolved in Africa, with the oldest fossil being nearly 6 million years old. But modern humans today, Homo sapiens, only appeared about 400,000 years ago. Now, as we move on to future, there's evidence that present-day Earth is undergoing a global warming climate change period. However, many scientists think that humans have contributed widely to this change because of their use of coal, oil, and other fossil fuels. So is this the end of changing on Earth's surface? Absolutely not. This process will continue, and it's going to be affected by both humans and by nature. But how humans affect the planet will be up to you. Okay, it's time to show what you know.